A story you probably didn't hear too much about. A Knoxville, Tennessee Planned Parenthood was set on fire. And now it has been confirmed by the fire department that this is a case of arson, meaning that it was intentionally set on fire. This happened on New Year's Eve, the morning of New Year's Eve to be specific. Knoxville Fire Department investigators, along with assistance from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, have conducted a thorough scene investigation of the December 31st Planned Parenthood fire and determined the fire to have been purposely set by an individual or individuals who at this time remain unidentified, the fire department said in a statement. Now, they are offering a $10,000 reward for anyone who has any information that could lead to the suspects. And the president of Planned Parenthood of Tennessee and North Mississippi said in a statement that they're gonna continue doing what they can, and they're gonna continue fighting to provide these services to women, despite the fact that they've been targeted by these domestic terrorists. She says, our priority is to establish a safe operating site and reconvene services for our patients as soon as we possibly can. We are committed to our patients in East Tennessee and will not let this attack take away the essential healthcare services on which they rely. Now, this clinic luckily was under renovations when this attack happened, so luckily no one was harmed or hurt. But this is not the first time that this particular Knoxville, Tennessee Planned Parenthood has been targeted by right-wing extremists. In fact, in January of just last year, a gunman shot out the clinic's reception area before it opened, shattering its front door. Now, since it was before it opened, luckily no one was hurt in that attack either. But it's not like these types of attacks haven't led to literal injuries and deaths in the past. And unfortunately, things have continued to get worse for abortion clinics across the country as these anti-reproductive rights measures have been passing in tandem. While purporting to protect human life, anti-abortion activists have firebombed clinics, opened fire on facilities, and murdered providers. This in addition to more commonplace intimidation tactics like vandalism, doxing, and everyday harassment of patients and staff. And by the way, I want to remind you all of one of the more extreme examples that took place back in 2015, where a man by the name of Robert Louis Deere engaged in a 5-hour-long standoff at a Planned Parenthood in Colorado Springs. That 5-hour-long standoff led to the death of 2 civilians and 1 police officer. To give you an update on that case, apparently a judge ruled that this man is unfit to stand trial and must receive mental health treatment prior to standing trial. But as we know for now, he's just receiving that treatment and really hasn't been prosecuted as a result of what he did. He murdered 3 different people during the standoff. And this story unfortunately continues to get worse. We've been covering the just deterioration of reproductive rights, Cenk, and it doesn't just stop there. There's extremism behind this. There are real physical violent attacks behind this. And Americans are paying a price for it. Women are paying a price in the form of their reproductive rights and their reproductive freedom. And this all comes from individuals who claim to be pro-life.
Yeah, so what's more disturbing is that right-wing terrorism in America is considered normal. So it's not a big news story when there's a right-wing terrorist attack. This same clinic was attacked a year ago and they shot out the front door. Did that make national news? None of this ever makes big news, right? Oh, abortion clinic was bombed. It was set on fire. It was shot at. So what? That's right-wing terrorism. That's perfectly normal. By the way, this is a trend that has been happening in America for as long as America has existed. When the Klan did right-wing terrorism, it was also considered normal. Like, oh, well, I mean, that's a cross burning in somebody's house. Of course, look, the lynchings were so normal, they had picnics around the body. So now if you did left-wing version of that, which you absolutely positively shouldn't, it would be a massive story. If you did a Muslim version of that, obviously everybody would talk nonstop about the terrorism, we're gonna stop all Muslims from entering the country. If Muslims were going around saying, hey, Allah told us this is that life is a stake and life is sacred, so that's why we went and attacked these doctors, everybody would go nuts, and it would be a national scandal of epic proportions. When right-wingers do it, they're like, oh, well, hey, they're pro-life, they get to murder. Or it's not that they get to do it, but it's not that big a deal. So over the last 4 decades, what's happened? The number of attacks against abortion clinics and doctors and people that are patients, etc., have increased dramatically. And in the last couple of years, when the Republicans have pushed out more bills on this topic, the violence has risen because the right wing believes in violence. Now, for the right wingers who say, well, wait a minute, Jake, this is about life, that's why I had to kill people. Okay, hold on, let me understand this right, because this is an important standard. Healthcare, privatized healthcare leads to 45,000 people a year dying because they don't have health insurance. That's a lot of dead bodies. That's a stadium full of dead bodies. So does that mean left wingers can just go and shoot health insurance executives? The answer to that is hell no. Don't do that, and that's insane. But right wingers talk about it like, oh, that's normal in our context. Hey, you know what? I thought a life was involved, so I just went and shot it or burned down their house or burnt down their office. No, you don't get to make that decision unilaterally. That's called terrorism when you say I get to kill other people because of my beliefs. And just saying it's because you're doing it because you're pro-life doesn't make it any better. It just makes it more ironic and hypocritical.
And remember, the pro-life argument comes from individuals who can't even be bothered to do something as simple as wear a mask during a global pandemic to keep people safe. And so it's impossible to take their alleged concerns seriously because they're not real concerns. I think the vast majority of anti-abortion activists in this country really just want to punish and control women. There's really nothing else to it than that. And their actions bear that out. The fact that they're willing to target, injure, and possibly even murder individuals at abortion clinics tells you everything you need to know about just how disingenuous they are when they make these so-called pro-life arguments. It's not about pro-life, it's about control and punishment.
And one last thing, Anna, propaganda is a hell of a drug. So they cherry pick every religious text, every religious leader does it. If they're good guys, they cherry pick the good parts. If they're bad guys, they cherry pick the bad parts. And since every religious document is filled with contradictions, they can pick anything they like. So the reason I bring that up here is, now you know, because if you watch the Young Turks, that of course the Bible is pro-abortion, but let's skip that part. Let's take another part that the Bible is actually against, shellfish. So now, why do I bring that up in this context? It's because if right-wing leaders told you that God hates shellfish, there would be shootings at Red Lobsters. And they would try to burn down and bomb Red Lobsters. They would, you think, no way, they're not gonna do that. Guys, all it is made up propaganda. They just happen to pick a thing that's not even in the Bible, and they decided that. Then you have to think why? Why did they pick that clause that doesn't even exist as opposed to the one that does? And that's what leads back to Anna's point. The reason they pretended that that was their religious preference is because they want to control women, and it drives them nuts that they don't get to treat them like chattel anymore. They used to be able to say, stay at home, do as you're told, produce babies, and cook while you're at it. Now you can't control women, and it's driving them crazy. Religion is just a BS excuse they use to commit that violence in their frustration.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.